my coffee under my chair over there, so apologies to the DMZ and to Ryerson. Mark, thank you. I guess it could be said that I'm here. How many people, when there was reference made to the Flintstones and the Jetsons, even know who any of those people are? The Jetsons is an old TV show, of course, that had us all flying around in magnetic levitation vehicles when it was on television in the 60s, and of course the Flintstones, I think that speaks for itself. But I want to start off just by saying that I come to this meeting, which I'm so glad that is being held, from the perspective of having worked in the media business at a time when it was just beginning the transformation, and I don't think any of us understood at the time how profound the transformation would be. And I think what's happened since then is nothing other than an incredible speeding up of the pace of transformation, which of course is extraordinarily difficult for businesses to deal with, but it prevents a great opportunity. I should note, by the way, the president of Ryerson is here, who I just had a nice chat with about their very exciting law school that is taking shape for this fall, and he understands better than most the pace of change that is taking place. When I was the CEO at Rogers Media, we, for example, thought we were really moving at the leading edge when we hired McKinsey to create what was the first Canadian portal, which is today still there. It's Canoe. And there wasn't a Canadian portal at the time that existed. We thought we were being tremendously innovative when we put Maclean's magazine content on Yahoo, for the first time. And we were. I mean, we were being very innovative, but at the time this was seen as kind of bold change that was taking place to put one of the country's most venerable print publications on a line. Nobody had really done that. When we even came up with the notion of a digital edition of Marketing Magazine, which was the sort of Bible of the advertising industry for probably 100 years, this was deemed to be sort of radical. And so it's interesting that even in that short time, I was the CEO of that company from 1995 to 2000. So it's not that long ago that those were things that were seen as revolutionary at the time. And of course, what's happened subsequent to that is a maturation of the tech ecosystem in the city of Toronto. Again, even in the last 5 years when I first became mayor, when I would go down to Silicon Valley to try and track back Canadian and particularly Toronto students who had graduated from Waterloo, U of T, Ryerson, and tried to get them to come back home to work in Toronto because we needed talent. The reason they had many reasons to say they would come, which included their families being here. Obviously, it included the fact that they recognized we had a much more progressive approach even to things like maternity leave and things like that. But they were a bit hung up on, I will confess, the most frequently cited topic was the weather. I, in front of audiences down there in Silicon Valley and elsewhere, said that this notion of any kind of severe winter here was a fabrication of our competitors, that it was sunny and warm at all times. But the second thing was a perceived lack of opportunity, that they just thought there wasn't, and they were right. I mean, I sort of would push back a bit on that, but frankly, I knew they were right that the depth and the breadth of the opportunity at that time, 5 years ago, in the city wasn't what it is today. But I think all that has changed radically, and to be candid, I think the push of some of the political developments in the U.S. and the general kind of environment there that people are sensing, plus the pull of the opportunity that exists here, has created a much different environment in which we can really count on being able to attract the best and the brightest. So to me, if there's any challenge that exists, and it's why I'm so glad this meeting is happening with a view to kind of saying, look, we can't sit back and say we've got this all covered. We've had tremendous success. I mean, I'm not going to stand up here and give what I call the Chamber of Commerce speech, rattling off things that you probably know, which is that our growth in tech jobs and so on has been phenomenal, as against any standard in North America or the world in the last number of years. It's been pushed along by our leadership in AI and the fact that that was something that was mocked many years ago, and today, of course, is at the core of a lot of the things that are happening. But I get afraid because it's kind of a Canadian thing. I think, as you know, that we'll often sort of say, well, this is fantastic. We've got this great job growth going. We've got companies coming here left, right, and center. We've got companies starting up here left, right, and center. And that means we can just sort of sit back and let the good times roll. I mean, I think, in fact, the need for us to do a couple of things. One is to focus on innovation, on things we're good at. And secondly, the need to sort of pick some lanes, I think, are more important than ever. By picking some lanes, I'm talking there, for example, about AI, where I think it's probably going to be necessary, notwithstanding our continued global leadership, for us to pick a couple of areas in which we can be excellent. I think of healthcare as well, because we have a consolidated healthcare system here that allows unique access to sort of data and to different things that are going on in one consolidated healthcare system, and I think that gives us an immense advantage to being able to capitalize on that and use technology there. But another one that I think gives us a huge opportunity, I mean, again, just looking out, a lot of you are much younger than me. We have had an excellence because of the size and breadth of our country. We've had an excellence over time in not only the development of content, because we had to be good at developing content and find innovative ways to finance it and to do it. Why? I think because we had a lot of talented people spread across a very big land, but also because we lived next to this behemoth, which if you went when I was in the magazine business, because part of what we had at Rogers Media was a huge number of magazines, you'd go to a magazine stand, and even with our Canadian offering, we would represent 10% on a good day of what was there. The rest of it was mostly American and European. And that's not a bad thing. It's great to have all kinds of diversity of voices, but for us to be successful, and for us to be successful in distributing television, for example, back in the day when distributing television was the name of the game, we got really good at that. We were world leaders because we had to be. We had to be to make sure our stories got told, and we had to be in order to make sure that we could have viable businesses north of the border that could survive. And I think the time has come again for us to take a look at this much more democratized world. In those days, you had a CRTC to sort of protect media voices that were here, to put in place legislated requirements, Canadian content for music, and they did wonders in terms of developing a Canadian music scene, for example, which I'm not sure would exist today had it not been for those rules. And I think one of the things I hope you can talk about is in a world that's much different, where it's much harder to, and people don't even accept necessarily the wisdom of regulating these things, you have to just be smarter and more nimble and more innovative about it and pick your lane to sort of say, okay, we're going to be really good at this within the context of the media space. And so all of which is to say that I think it's really important that you're meeting to have that kind of discussion, which goes beyond just the usual discussion of either telling ourselves how good we are or of just sort of saying, well, let's just do more of the same and that will work, because I don't think it will. I will just say by way of a couple of concluding comments that the one thing that we have to do, and I gave a talk yesterday on this subject in Hamilton, is continue to invest in post-secondary education so that we continue to have the pipeline full of smart people. I think that those who would take us in the direction of reducing or even leaving flat our investment in post-secondary education are making a huge mistake, because it is smart people who are smart in different areas. It doesn't matter what area we're talking about, who represent our greatest asset that we have here, which is attracting people from around the world, and will attract other smart people, either to come home to Canada or to come to Canada from all over the world. And to me, that's been a blessing that we've had. I think we have to keep the doors open, meaning that we have to make sure that we're still welcoming people from around the world, because as much as they may not be people that are steeped in Canadian stories, they're often people that will have the best ideas ultimately on how to get Canadian stories out there and make sure the Canadian innovations that come from people like you are able to sort of reach fruition. I think we have to broaden our commitment to inclusivity and to our value set, which I think is right now taking us in a direction that's different than the rest of the world. And sometimes you get sort of tired of swimming upstream because it is tiring. But at the same time, I think we're on the right path when it comes to inclusivity and to a lack of polarization and division. That has got us actually on a path that is going to attract far more of those people to come to Toronto and to Canada, as opposed to just buying into the notion that we all have to polarize each other. And I bring that approach, by the way, to how I try to support the tech sector, because people will urge me to just support local startup and scale up businesses and forget about those global multinationals. And I say, no, we need both. We need Facebook to be here and to have a substantial presence here and to actually say this is a place in the world that we want to focus our investment and activity, just as we need the homegrown firms that need to support each other. And so I think that's something that's going to be important as well. I will just say to you, by way of one final comment, that I hope part of what you will discuss today, because I believe in the end, it will pay business benefits, it will pay media benefits, it will pay innovation benefits, is how we can take the values that I think we share and put those to work in doing something beyond just looking for ways to sort of make money and build shareholder value in media enterprises. By that, what I mean is that the film industry, for example, and it's interesting because in Los Angeles, they kept telling me when I'd go there pitching for productions to be made here, that we're counting on you to show us as an industry that has fallen way behind in terms of having many groups that are underrepresented, women, racialized communities and so on. We're counting on you in Toronto to show us how this can happen because we think you get it, more so than perhaps people elsewhere. And so as a result of that, and I think it's because it's in our DNA, we have some incredible programs. I went to one last week, and again, I'm just asking you to think about the ways in which we can replicate this in the media space, where they've taken, I think they're taking 15 kids at a time and putting them right onto the set of Star Trek and all the things that are being produced here in Toronto right now. And these are kids plucked from marginalized neighborhoods that are isolated from a lot of this opportunity. For them, when they read about the billions of dollars of film and television production being done in Toronto, they have no frame of reference for it because in their neighborhood there's not much happening. And we put those kids into that circumstance. Many of them are from racialized communities. If you saw, as I did, the joy on those faces, but the confidence that it gives them and the leg up it's going to give them to be part of an industry that then will diversify itself because of those sorts of initiatives, I think that the tech ecosystem in Toronto has a lot of work to do in that regard as well, and to make sure that there's a kind of another bottom line that we're measuring against, because it's the way we do things here, and I think it's ultimately going to lead to our success and to our global leadership, which is to make sure that we can sort of demonstrate that there is more to this than just making money, building shareholder value, and selling something to somebody. So I would just urge you to sort of put that as a bit of a frame of reference in your discussions today. But I'm really bullish on everything that you represent and all the people. We have these sessions at City Hall. Some of you have come to them as Tech TO, and there's like 400 people put themselves into the City Hall Council chamber and share ideas and so on. That's when I know that we have a bright future in this area, and that's when I know that my commitment to it, whether it includes film and media or much purer tech or AI, is the right place for us to position ourselves to make sure that the city continues to be successful going forward. And it's not just successful economically. The economic success of the city will spell our ability to be able to help people who are struggling, give a bit of a hand up to people who need a bit of a hand up, whether it's through education or otherwise. And that's what certainly I'm interested in doing. So I will sit down, try not to spill my coffee again. I noticed they came by and did something with it. So I just tried to sort of not look at that while they were cleaning it up. Who did that? What idiot did that? But I will listen to the discussion, because I think this is a discussion worthy of my hearing in the context of keeping us moving forward. So thank you for your attention, and thank you for inviting me to be part of this.